Hey everybody, welcome back to Readers of the Right. Are you a Warhammer player that's been struggling to make your favorite faction's lore and your favorite faction's tabletop games come together? Well, I have two. I'm a White Scars player who really struggles to match up the lore that I read in some amazing books with what happens on the tabletop, especially in 10th edition. There was a little bit more room in 9th edition, but now my army doesn't exist. I've actually had to pivot to an entirely different army to even really enjoy it. So today we're going to talk about the 5 armies that I've personally noticed are the hardest to actually make lore accurate. That being said, I'm sure there are more than 5. If you can think of any that I didn't mention, let me down in the comments below. I'd love to hear more input from all the different players with so many different factions and styles. There are probably a lot of them. So let's dive into it. I've kind of already mentioned the first one, and that is my White Scars. I am a huge fan of the White Scars in lore. My ancestry, part of it stems from Mongolia through the Lipka Tatars in Poland. So for me, it's a very personal army. I really enjoy them. And a lot of what they represent and how they act is in the lore is what drew me to them in the first place. I'm a player who started in lore first and then picked up the tabletop. So when 10th edition rolled around and I lost my Stormseer's abilities, I lost my captain on bike, I lost my librarian on bike, I lost a lot of what made my army so playable and so enjoyable. You can kind of see some of my White Scars right there. Almost a third of that army is now either not in Legends or is just unplayable based on the new rule sets. That's been a real struggle for me. So I went through and tried to figure out the most playable list that I could to match at least some of the fluff. I went for a full speed company. Now, in the lore, a full speed company doesn't actually exist. And I'm thinking about doing another video here in a few weeks where I deep dive that and dive into the lore some more and look at how you could actually play a full company or a full chapter based on the actual lore. But for now, I went with the simple full speed list. And honestly, I really couldn't do it. It involved maxing out the number of chaplain on bikes, maxing out the number of outriders, maxing out the number of invader ATVs, which I kind of hate. And even then I ended up having to mix and match several different units to try and just kind of make it work. Putting as many assault intercessors and things like that in impulsors or other modes of transport that way, just trying to make it work. Even the land spears have been pretty heavily crippled, so I couldn't throw those in very well. It was a long struggle, and to be completely honest, I wouldn't want to field that army anyways. It doesn't look fun. It's a very one-trick pony army that doesn't play well, even with the detachment that it was designed for. And that was kind of frustrating for me. But like I said, I do have a deep dive on how to make it match the actual lore coming out here in a few weeks. So make sure you guys like and subscribe, ring that little bell so that you can be notified when that comes up, along with it, all of the other cool videos I have planned. And if you have any other armies that you would like me to try and do a deep dive on into the lore to try and build a lore accurate army that is both playable and lore accurate, let me know. I'm always looking for those, and honestly, I do really enjoy this kind of blending of lore and tabletop. I tend to be more of a narrative player than a tournament player, but trying to find the blend of those two is something that really excites me. So let's jump to the next one. The next one is the Adeptus Mechanicus, but specifically the Cybernetica. Cybernetica is a really cool branch of lore that shows up every once in a while that has a lot of really cool things in the lore that allow for basically almost robots and combat servitors and all of these things being controlled by tech priests and all of their bells and whistles. But when you go and try and build that on the tabletop, it's almost non-existent. It was another time where I had to stretch and repeat a lot of units. And then I even just kind of gave up and threw in some Skitarii and a few other things like that. I should say, if you guys are interested in the actual army lists that I had to come up with to kind of make these work, let me know in the comments below. I'm happy to share them. I've got them currently saved. So I'm happy to share them, and we can discuss if there's places that I could have added something or dropped something. I would love to hear that as well. I'm always working on building my lists better. So, like I said, this was a really hard one. I'm not super familiar with AdMech as is. So trying to wrap my mind around it while looking for a very weak faction inside the Mechanicus was a lot harder than I thought it would be. The third one is one that I've started looking at a lot lately as I've been collecting and painting Thousand Suns, and that is Tzeetch Demons. Now, demons in general are a very weird one, and I don't think Tzeetch is alone here, but it's probably the hardest to build. Khorne has a lot of bloodletters and a lot of greater demons that are very, very helpful to build out a list. And they're kind of the poster child for demons right now. A lot of the value boxes are demon or Khornite demons. Slaanesh has a lot that are still currently available. Nurgle has some decent amount too. But when it comes to Tzeetch demons, you're very, very hamstrung, especially now that they just actually removed several of those demons from being purchasable and available. You end up with a bunch of pink and blue horrors, with some screamers, a fate skimmer, and a chains caster, and that's really about all you get. There are a few others you can throw in there, but they don't really help you out. You kind of just have to turn into a horde army with the horrors. And like I said, there's a few other ways you can tweak it, but it's not super playable. It's not super helpful. You go up against a lot of armies and you're just going to get smashed with those. It doesn't seem like it's very fun to play. Even when you bring in Kairos, or Demon Princes, it is a struggle. It was a struggle to even get to 2,000 points while I was building this list. And it's something I wish Games Workshop would address a little bit better. They do struggle with their demon factions. They're very hard to play on the actual tabletop because a lot of them were designed for Age of Sigmar, not for 40k. So you're missing a lot of the cool bells and whistles that you see in 40k, in the lore especially. Tzeetch has a lot of really, really cool versions of horrors that you don't get to see. You do see a lot of the pink horrors and the blue horrors and the ember horrors, but there are other things that Tzeetch does that are very malleable and changeable and fluid that you don't get to see on the tabletop, and you miss on the tabletop pretty heavily. Okay, now this fourth one is one that, while technically doable, is not very good on the tabletop right now based on the rules. And that is Imperial Knights. Now, this one kind of came up when I was reading Assassinorum Kingmaker, and you got to see the actual structure of how knight houses work, where you have typically a supreme knight with a subclass of knights, and then there are armigers underneath them that are tied to certain knights or sworn to certain knights a lot of the time. So in order to get it playable, you typically have to have that tier build to them. You have to have your senior knight, so a Lancer or a Canis Rex, followed by some Questoris patterns. I think in my list I ended up with 2. So one senior knight I went with the Lancer, and then I think I have 2 Questoris patterns. Unfortunately, I don't have the list directly in front of me at the moment, but went with those 2, and then I had to get enough armatures to pair with the greater knights so that they could work in tandem with their knight. And doing that isn't a very balanced list for the way 40k plays, unfortunately, but it does look really cool. It's a list that I actually hope to build someday and be able to field, because I've kind of fallen in love with the knights in both the Horus Heresy recently, as well as Assassinorum Kingmaker. They're very, very cool, and I want to see if I can make them work in a situation more like this versus the War Dog and Armiger spam that is current, more tournament play type armies, because they can move quicker and they can hold objectives better, just because they can move around and they can still shoot, and they're a lot cheaper. So that one is more of a feasibility than availability, like a lot of the other ones have been. And that leads into the last one, which is 100% availability. As some of you guys may know from some of my previous videos, the story that brought me into the Warhammer 40k universe is Gaunt's Ghosts. I absolutely love that series. It is one of my favorites. It's one of the ones I go back to on the regular. So for me, when I think of building an Astra Militarum army, the only army that comes to mind is the Tanith first. That's what I want to build. That is not going to happen at all, because of the way the current Astra Militarum is set up, and especially the way the Gaunt's Ghosts team is set up in the epic leadership skills. In the lore, Gaunt's team is never typically working as a singular group. That command staff that he has are all assigned to different units. So you have Corbeck in one, and Ron in another, and Bragg will be with the heavy weapons teams. So you end up with them separated, but because of the way the rules work for the Gaunt's Ghost, you can't do that. So you end up with a squad of, I think, 6 characters that are all stuck together, but shouldn't be, and that's not the way they operate. So on top of that, you have no standard human snipers, you have no standard human light infantry like scouts, and you have no Tanith cloaks that are really playable. We have a small army that we use for narrative play that I've actually had to 3D print so I could get the cloaks on them. And we play them with a faux cover bonus, so that they can get the cloak ability. But it's just pretty much a raw infantry, about 1,000-point army that makes its appearance in narrative. It does not look good because they're 3D printed, and I had to just go and see if I could find anything with that cloaked Celtic vibe in order to create this army. But that is literally the only way it's playable, is if I 3D print a bunch of stuff and I make up rules. It's an army that will never see the light of day in tournament play, which is unfortunate because it could be a lot of fun to set up battle lines and cover and have the 10th scouts doing cool shenanigans, kind of like Tau Pathfinders, I think is how they would play if the rule set existed. You would also have the heavy weapons teams paired with your just standard infantry. That would be really fun. There's a lot of really cool stuff you could do if it were possible to do. But because the rule sets don't exist, and because the models don't exist, and because the Gonskos command staff isn't, the rules don't function the way you would need them to function. Honestly, that staff should be broken up so that they can be played individually as epic heroes on different parts of the board. You can always still sell the box set the same way, kind of like you do the Exalted Sorcerers for Thousand Suns, where you get 3 of them in there, but they're all 3 separate units. I think that's how Gonskos should be as well. You should be able to put an Ibram Gaunt into an infantry unit or a heavy infantry unit. You should be able to put McCall and McVenna into scout squads. You should be able to put Bragg with a heavy weapons squad and give them bonuses that way. They would be so much more playable and so much more effective if done that way. So that's another one that I've put a lot of thought into, and I tried to create a list to make it somewhat playable. But once again, because I'm constrained by the Gonskos rules, I had to just try and build a 2,000 point army to get as close as possible. And I had to blur the lines in the lore a little bit so that certain characters, like additional commissars, would make sense. I put in Primaris Psyker to represent one of the characters. There are actually 2 of them in the lore, but a lot of them aren't in the army at the same time. But in order to get the points and make it kind of work, I had to fudge that line a little bit. So once again, if you guys have any questions or you want to see that list, let me know. I'm happy to share it. But now let's just talk about some quick honorable mentions as well that didn't make this list. One, because I don't know a lot about them. I've never actually seen them on the tabletop. And the other 2, because I wasn't able to get as specific as the top 5. Honestly, I probably will do a deeper breakdown on these in future videos. All 5 of the ones we've already talked about, as well as these 3. The first one is one that I've always wanted to build, but I'm not sure how you would do it, and that's the Iron Warriors. The Iron Warriors are really, really cool lore. I've gotten to love them a lot in the Horus Heresy, and it's been a lot of fun to learn more about them. But when you turn around and look at the tabletop, the Chaos Space Marines aesthetic does not match the Iron Warriors aesthetic. So the only thing I can think of to do it would either be to proxy regular Space Marines or proxy Horus Heresy Marines in there, which both are doable, both are not tournament play acceptable, but I want to look at how to do that as well. So I'm definitely going to do a video on that one, mostly because they are on my list of armies I hope to eventually own. The next one, we're going to go Space Marines. It's the Raven Guard. They're another army that I'm not sure the rule set really benefits, especially with the way Reaver armor functions and Scouts function. You're losing a lot of the abilities that the Raven Guard has in lore that you can't really apply to the tabletop with the current rule set. And finally is the Harlequins. I know this one kind of hurts for any Harlequin players. I'm sorry. Games Workshop just decided they hate you and removed all of your lore stuff and just absorbed you into the Eldar. That is very unfortunate. So, if you've stuck with us this long, make sure you like and subscribe and ring that little bell so you get notified anytime we have some other videos coming. We've got a lot of cool stuff. We've got a couple book reviews, as well as some videos diving deeper into this. So, feel free to join us. And if you have any other suggestions or armies that I missed here, please let me know in the comments below. I'm always looking for more of these so that we can do some deep dives on them. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.